Rewatching the video I made, I realized just how shallow I kind of made the review. I didn't want to spoil anything, but there was just some points where I didn't even dive down into any of the topics at all. So I decided that right now would probably be the best time to kind of make like an extended review, but this time not worry about spoilers. So if you couldn't read the title or you didn't just hear what I said, beyond this point, it's just going to be spoilers, or at least minor spoilers. I don't know how deep I'm going to go into this, but there's definitely going to be spoilers. Most important thing I should address is probably the third act. Everybody is saying that the third act is the make or break of the movie, and there's been a lot of people saying that they just don't like the third act. I'm kind of sitting on the fence when it comes to the third act, but more so I'm standing on the fence, so that way I'm not leaning over to one side more than the other. It's just kind of like, it's not that I have media illiteracy, it's just that there's some things that people are complaining about that are easily explained through the film, like literally right in front of their faces, and the other half, it's just, I don't even know how to explain it. For those who aren't going to watch the movie or just haven't yet, basically the reason why a lot of people are confused about how the third act starts is because the second act follows a basically kind of what the YouTube channel was, lost footage, first person kind of VHS horror filming, right? And at some point it just abruptly ends and then it cuts to our second character, Mary, in her living room. And then from that point on, for the rest of the film, there's not a single bit of lost footage recording ever again. Now, from an in-universe logical explanation why there isn't any more footage after that point, because it would just be kind of weird for Mary to have her own camera and just start recording when she's looking for Clark. And personally, I don't even mind it. I didn't mind that the last 30 minutes were not lost footage. I mean, it was kind of not really a stab in the heart, but was just kind of like maybe a tiny letdown because the first two acts were lost footage and this one was just kind of filmed like a normal movie. Or from that point that Mary goes into the backrooms, a lot of people just say that everything feels rushed or that there was like at least 15 minutes missing from the film itself. I think in a total of like 5 minutes, Mary gets to explore the backrooms by herself, which from a filmmaker perspective, I understand why it was so short because we already seen a huge majority of it with Clark's point of view, so it'd be kind of just a waste of time if Mary did the same exact thing. And from that point on, when Mary enters the backrooms, a lot of people say that the whole scene afterwards just feels rushed and short and like 15 minutes of the film were just missing. I think from a filmmaker perspective, the reason why is because it's kind of obvious. Clark did a lot of exploring. We see a lot of his exploring, so it'd be kind of a waste of time if Mary just walked around for another 10 minutes to show everything we already know about it. But it's the following scene that makes a lot of people just kind of like, okay, bro, this movie kind of just whatever. And that's the part where I kind of start sitting on the fence because everything after that point of her exploring, it's just kind of, it's abrupt, but I don't think it's rushed. Basically, in short, she gets in a dead end and sees a bunch of random, like, schizo scribbling on the wall, and she eventually meets Clark. And Clark is just weird and crazy because he's been in here for, like, 2 weeks to a month based on the visual cues on the screen, such as the fact that his mail's really backed up, like his weekly bills or whatever. And I don't even remember what they exchange words, but they eventually hear like big footsteps, and then Clark's like, "Oh, don't worry, it's just me." And then he just starts choking her out in a headlock. When she eventually wakes up, she's like tied in a chair. Without going into extreme detail, like word for word of the script, he basically just monologues about how he likes it in the back rooms because, you know, there's no responsibilities. He could do whatever he wants and, you know, there's just no stress. The dialogue is pretty interesting to say the least. I do think it was a bit tense. There was some scenes in that whole shot where, you know, he's just, it just shows that he's gone insane. It also shows in the room in like full light, like these three kind of weird creatures, the backroom creatures, right? But they're just kind of just, the best way I can explain it, mannequins that somewhat move their head from time from time. And they mainly show kind of like how Clark was surviving food wise, and I think also just kind of used him like a pin cushion to show that he's kind of deranged. Like at some point he's like showing Mary that they don't feel anything, but just like fucking poking the dude in the neck with his knife. You know, there's no blood or anything. He just doesn't even react. There's another scene where he just straight up scalps one and takes the hair and puts it on Mary. Then comes probably the actual make or break of the ending of the movie, and that's the reveal of the big monster, the big bad, you know? A lot of people, including myself, were kind of expecting it to be the actual entity from the YouTube series, but unfortunately it wasn't. The creature was just a very tall, very gross-looking version of Clark in his pirate costume, which at first I think was just kind of lame, but watching it, it just... No, to be honest, I'm not even going to back down. I just think it was kind of lame. Or at least at the time, I thought it was lame until I actually used my big boy brain after digesting the movie for 2 days straight and watching fan theories and stuff. But, like, my own theory about why it is Captain Clark is because based on what Clark was explaining about how the Backrooms just tries to replicate what's on the surface. And we see in the beginning of the film that the worker that's going around the Backrooms, there's that one section that kind of just like a half copy of the furniture store. Like you see the sale signs and the actual furniture. I think it was a lot of context clues just telling you that like, hey, this specific part of the Backrooms is meant to copy everything that's above, which was, well, the furniture store. Therefore, an extension of that was Captain Clark, which, you know, Clark was a pirate costume for like a lot of his career. I say theory like it was something I cooked up like a few days ago to try to cope with like me not understanding. No, it wasn't even a theory. It was just kind of blatantly right in front of you. I think anyone who missed that just wasn't watching the movie with their eyes open. It's also shown that Clark is kind of buddy-buddy with this bigger version of himself. Although, like any other horror protagonist that tries to make amends with the creature, it doesn't end well. The thing literally just picks it up, give him a big old bear hug, and then just bites the shit out of him like a cheeseburger. And then the next, 10 minutes is a chase scene between Mary and this entity. And at some points it is kind of scary, because, she walks out a door to go to another door to try to find an exit, and the camera pans behind her, and tall-ass pirate monster thing is just dragging, Clark's body along the ground. It just blood everywhere, just whatever, dude. It looked kind of insane. Some people, including myself, thought that it was a bit anticlimactic because, as she's running through these tight corridors, you can hear the thing grunting and moaning, and it's just kind of like, you know what it looks like now, and it's just like, okay. Skipping the chase scene, we just get straight to the ending. I'm just going to talk about the ending. I don't feel like rehearsing the entire chase scene to you. Basically, Mary gets away. She meets with the scientist people, the people who are just trying to, study the Backrooms, and then she's brought into interrogation, and then the whole ending is just left open. It doesn't tell you what happens to her, which... This is the part that tends to piss me off. Based on the body language of the scientist that's interviewing her, it's very clear what's going to happen to Mary is that she's either just going to be, killed or put in a mental asylum. But these people are saying, I don't understand what's happening. What's going to happen to her? I can't use my common knowledge about, I don't know, a person accidentally discovering government secrets? Her fate is just not said at all. It's just completely left to your interpretation, because the very last thing you see before the movie actually ends and goes to the credits is a few shots of the Backrooms of different locations that we've seen in the movie, and the very last one is the actual interrogation room, like the Backrooms version of it, and there's the Backrooms version of Mary just sitting silently, holding her hands, just looking creepy as ever, and that's just how it ends. I know the way I set up this video sounds like I was going to go through the entire film again, but the reason why I was mainly talking about the third act is because, quite literally, like I said in the beginning, the third act is the make or break for a lot of people. The third act is the reason why a lot of people who watched the first two acts says that this movie was like an 8.5, maybe even a 9, and then the third act just made it go down to a 7. The reason why I gave the film an 8.5 and will continue to stand by giving it an 8.5 is because a lot of the things that confused a lot of people to make it a 7 wasn't confusing to me. I caught that shit like a baseball. Also, why does everything have to be explained? Like, why do you need a written paper report about what happens to Mary and Clark? You already saw what happened to Clark. He got bit into. He's dead. Mary, on the other hand, she's probably in an asylum in Alaska or is probably going to get shot in the head. Why do you need to know? Use your brain. Use your interpretation. To put everything into one big conclusion, this is what I have to say. The first 2 acts are amazing. They literally need no explanation. Anybody, including your grandma, can follow them. They are also probably the most unnerving and most artistic parts of the movie. Once you get to Act 3, however, the tone will completely change. It'll be the closest thing you'll get to an explanation for what the Backrooms is, and the closest thing to an explanation of what the monsters are. Act 3 mainly serves as a rough conclusion to our characters, to our story, and it just leaves a very open and vague ending to what's going to happen to Mary, but in general, what's just going to happen with the Backrooms. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if you can look past the fact that the movie is just going to be random and that there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be left unexplained, and of course there's going to be a few times that like dialogue and such is just going to seem bland and whatever, it's a really good movie. I think people will enjoy it, and I think anybody from any level of knowledge of the Backrooms can enjoy it. I still give it an 8.5 out of 10.